interactions and epigenetic regulation in children with autism. She also has interest in immune abnormalities and peripheral disorders such as asthma and GI dysfunction. So it's a pleasure to have you join our panel, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Did you see the slide?
No, please open the slide and then hit share screen and then select.
Okay, share screen. Okay.
Yeah, and select the presentation.
Yeah. Oh, I hit the share screen.
Does it show you the presentation in the panel?
Yeah.
Just select that.
Let's see. You don't see that?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. I think that I hit the so that I hit the screen. Did you see?
Yeah.
Now we do.
Okay.
Now we're getting there. Yeah. And Harumi, you might want to turn your camera down just a little bit because we can only see you from the nose up. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry. Yeah.
And if you can please go to the slideshow. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now it's okay.
It's good.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And thank you for inviting me, and also very generously funding this project. So this is a progress report of the project that funded by the Brain Foundation, and essentially focused for the innate immune memory biomarkers as a part of the neuroinflammation. So, So the Brain Foundation funding this project has two aims. Number one, I have been working on the monocyte cytokine profiles as a marker of the innate immune response, and we want to associate with the clinical characteristic of those cytokine profiles. And the reason why we looked for the monocyte cytokine profiles, that's as a marker of the innate immunity. Obviously, innate immunity has been thought about for the some implications of neuroinflammation in other type of the neuropsychiatric conditions, and it has been worked as for the in other common neuropsychiatric conditions such as depression, schizophrenia, something like that. Then why the innate immunity and the innate immune memory was really implicated? All these neuropsych conditions, all the studies try to implicate with one specific pathogens associated with condition has been all failed. So all the conclusion is really non-specific immune response, which is typically the innate immune responses associated with onset and progress of the neuropsychiatric symptoms. But then its question rises, why is the innate immunity, which doesn't have any memory, but a lot of condition once activated, then it's very lasting effect. So obviously the innate immunity doesn't have any memory for specific pathogen, just like if we have a measles, we have a very prolonged memory for measles. But then, about like 10 years ago, from that Dutch group, there is a concept of the innate immune memory, and which is essentially the epigenetic changes of the monocyte or macrophage populations. And those monocyte or macrophage and also other innate immune cells are also true. They're all later found out. There is an innate immune memory generated in response to fairly strong immune stimuli. And those changes were initially metabolic changes. And it's usually ATP, like ATP production to more getting into the glyconeogenesis, then accumulations accumulate, which is changing the histone modification, affecting the histone acetylase and histone methyltransferase changes. So essentially a lot of things associated like a mitochondrial functional change. Then also it's a prolonged case. It has been shown there is a change of the histone modification. I'm sorry, it says I misspelled. Histone modification markers is changed. And this is for the ASD. And so that's a part of the reason we check first the monocyte cytokine profile, and then how associated with clinical feature. Then how these conditions was also any associations, monocyte histone modification markers. And then in the selected patient, we're going to do the super enhancer chip sequencing. Then which target to be used for super enhancer chip sequencing, we will decide based on the expression of the histone modification markers. Then M2 is for the more likely the quick assessment of the serum markers, which can be used for screening of those changes. Then previously you have done this deep sequencing of the microRNA in serum. And the reasoning why we did that, because the major source of the microRNA in the serum is a platelet and monocyte macrophage. And also the microRNA as secreted as a form of the, it's like a cyst with like a, it's a fairly stable and secreted as like a increased in the endosome. So that's the reason why the microRNA, because we did a long time ago, we did the serum cytokine levels, and those are not very helpful. So we wanted for the little more reliable, like a serum marker. So these are two purposes of the our proposed study that the Brain Foundation funded. And then we tried to do the this. We haven't completely finished, but so that's some of the progress report. Some of the AM2 is almost finished. So okay. So the initial study for the associations between clinical features and monocyte cytokine profiles. So that was we did that because the previous studies and also the more newly recruited. So we have done that about like close to 150 in ASD subject. And some of the clinical association, it was significant, is GI symptoms and TNF alpha production. Then also for the IL-6 and IL-1 beta, that was more associated or fluctuating behavioral symptom. It's categorized as PANS, but I don't think the ASD patient has a real PANS. It's more likely the post-infectious neuroinflammation, and it does show the symptoms like anxiety, OCD, anxiety, irritability, and worsening hyperactivity type. And seizure disorders, which is not surprising, at least our data showing some association of the IL-1 beta production by monocyte. And we just made sure those associations are not associated with the medications they're currently on, because recruited patient is not really ruled out with the use of the medication. And also, it wasn't affected by age, gender, and the other core variables we checked. And also, we didn't see the significant association with the autism severity by ADOS. So then we have done the histone modification marker expression. We assessed in the 48 subjects, and now we kind of in the process of another 24 subjects. So this is for the preliminary, this is only preliminary result. Then addition of the data may change. But for the IL-10 production by monocyte under the LPS, zymosine, or beta-glucan, so those are positively associated with expression of the H3K23AC, which is a typical like a histone activation marker. It's reported to be upregulated in the trained immunity, which is more likely the little more hyperactive innate immune memory. But usually for the H3K27AC is only temporary. Then other type of the intermediate, they tend to have the downregulated. But at least for the current condition, H3K23AC tend to be continue to be upregulated in ASD patient, which is a little different from the reported histone modification marker pattern reported in the trained immunity, at least mouse model and some of the human studies. So seems a little different from the ASD patient. And we also see that for and it's we did see the IL-10 production is a suppressor cytokine. So we did see we expected H3K23 as AC expression. IL-10 production supposed to be downregulated, so it's going to be a negative association. However, and that was true, at least for preliminary data for the non-ASD controls. But again, ASD subject has a more positive, like, it's not clearly positive. Some of them is, so it's not very, its association seems different. Yeah. But they did see the sum. So at least for preliminary data, those markers for the epigenetic regulation for trained immunity seems like different in ASD patient as compared to non-ASD control. So this is not so many patients because still in the very preliminary, but non-ASD patient appear to have some negative association between the IL-10 production and the H3K23AC expression. It's essentially the higher expression, it's lower IL-10 production. But it's more like a positive association we see between the H3K23AC expression by monocyte and then for the monocyte IL-10 production. So that was also a little puzzled us. So we want to see further. Then at least we have looked for the 4 histone modification markers as markers of the histone trained immunity as well as the tolerance type. And the best significant changes were seen in the H3K27AC expression. So therefore, we have now doing the super enhancer chip sequencing, and the target molecule we selected as the H3K23AC. And then we this assay is very costly. So that we only checking for the very significant patient of the various infant conditions. So there are two different relatively stable SD subject, and it's more like a very lot of inflammatory condition and some non-SD control. And it depends on the result, we try to scale down the little more less expensive, like a little simplified chip sequencing. Then we can do more samples. So, okay. So then this is like a progress report of the M1. Then the progress report for the second part, M2, this is we have more data, so a little more detailed result I can show. And this is as I explained, we wanted to have the good, very stable serum marker, and also very easy to be detected by almost everybody. So essentially, we selected from the previous microRNA deep sequencing result, we selected 7 microRNAs. Then we just checked it with a regular quantitative, essentially QRT PCR. Then it's like an expression of the result of the PCR count. It's a normalized PCR count. And I like, and actually now many people now using the normalized PCR count because it's a little small amount for present. These, the way that this is expressed, at least my understanding, is getting popular to express like this way. And also I'm familiar with this, the way that it's expressed because these, the way that a PCR count has been used for the newborn screening for the skit. So I'm involved in the newborn screening skit in the New Jersey. So I'm used to be the this kind of the way expression of the QRT PCR result. And so the essentially we used for 130 SD subjects and 50 non-SD controls. And so the essentially for the we didn't find so the significant changes from controls of these 7 microRNA PCR count when we combined all the SD subjects. However, when we checked for the changes based on the comorbid condition, there is some changes, and those changes are most significantly observed SD subject with or without seizure or sleep disorders. Essentially, the SD subject without seizure or sleep disorders have a higher circulating level, which means lower PCR count as compared to the seizure SD subject with seizure or sleep disorders or non-SD controls. So this is for the result. Change is not that like a significant striking, still like a piece. This is Mann-Whitney test result, and there is for the like a seizure negative, there is some MI 423, and also for the sleep positive or sleep negative subset, there is a difference. And it's in general, PCR count is lower in the sleep negative, which means all these the levels of the circulating mRNA is higher. And so, and this is like a 0. Other 3 didn't have show that the p-value, but it's very close, like a p equals 0.06 or 0.7. So it's a tendency to have this. So this is for the condition, and we did see the some like production and comorbid condition So is there any problem? So we wanted to see if it was these microRNA PCR count, is there any association with monocyte cytokine production? And especially we thought if this is see some difference, maybe the ASD subject with or without seizure and sleep disorder maybe shows a different conditions, different association. And actually that was true. We did see some positive associations with production monocyte cytokines. It's a TNF-alpha, IL-6, IL-1 beta, IL-10. So these are kind of the cytokines almost. So that's why I was interested for the serotonin metabolism too. And so this was actually this kind of association is only more evident with without seizure or sleep disorders. The patient who has a seizure or sleep disorders, they didn't have a good association. Essentially, microRNA levels stays low, then cytokine production stays up. That is a type of the patient who has a lot of sleep disorders and seizures. And interestingly, we didn't see such associations when in non-ASD controls. So this is for the how it's like associated with. So I didn't see the data for the So I did see the some of the association or ASD total, and this is we just showing the spontaneous TNF-alpha production because this is probably most likely reflecting the in vivo status. Then we didn't show any data with ASD with seizures or with sleep disorder because we didn't see any significant association. And the result was the p-values shown is a result of the Spearman test, but it's essentially similar result we also obtained with Kendall-Taubes test as well. So essentially pretty good association, especially when we see this, when we looked into this association with ASD and without sleep disorders. And this is a TNF-alpha production, and the same kind of the association we see IL-6 production. But it's not as TNF-alpha production, we did see the more good association. And the same way for the IL-1 beta production. But IL-1 beta production, we did see some association non-ASD controls, but this is again opposite. This is for the no positive association for the PCR count. It's actually the negative association. So this is again quite a different association that we see with those microRNA, circulatory microRNA levels and the cytokine production. And it's also, again, we did see the spontaneous IL-10 production and miRNA levels. Again, this is for the sleep ASD patient without sleep disorder or without seizure. It's a good positive association. Okay, so the essentially for how if the serum circulatory levels of miRNAs are associated with those cytokine production, then also we saw that some GI, some comorbid conditions, we saw that previously some associations with monocyte production. So we want to see if those kind of if circulating level of these 7 microRNAs checked, does it change with some of the ASD subject. And this part we haven't completed yet, but at least in 3 patients in whom we are able to get the serum sample repeatedly. And partly because they are relatively closely followed in our clinic and they are sick, so that we are able to get the serum samples. So this is for the patient. Case 1 is really very severe seizure disorder. And we have to use a lot of immunomodulating agent. We used the mTOR inhibitor and also anakinra, iron beta blockers. And he was also on the IVIG. And all the levels got better with seizure is actually video EEG completely normal. But after the hit by microbial infection, unfortunately, all the levels went up. And case 2 has been diagnosed with more like encephalopathy, and he has been giving a lot of mitochondrial rescue medicine like leucovorin high dose and IVIG, and also tried on rituximab and a lot of medication tried on the autoimmune encephalitis. But his level stays fairly high levels and never been getting the, PCR values high means circulatory miRNA levels stays very low. And number 3, these are patients. The third patient is a GI, significant GI symptoms. But he did respond to a lot of probiotics and also have antifungal or other type of the dysbiosis treatment and dietary intervention. And in his case, his clinical features get better, means less hyperactivity, less anxious, and it's more like a more focusing without using any other medication. And it's nicely those circulatory, these 3 circulatory RNAs, microRNAs, PCR count is decreased, means levels are getting higher. So I think that those circulatory microRNA levels might be the good marker for the disease activity, and especially these levels PCR count high, which means circulatory levels stays low. There will be something problematic or something else we need to look into that. Yeah, and especially I was fascinated with sleep patient who has a lot of sleep disturbance have the very low levels. So those association we need to look into that. So these are not these circulatory microRNA levels are not a good like marker for autism diagnosis, but it may be a marker for neuroinflammation. And also we checked for the what kind of the function these microRNA does, and we haven't completely finished, but it's mostly reported in the cancer study because they are like a suppressor of the cancer. So suppressor cancer means immunologically essentially suppress the immune activation. So those these microRNA is essentially the suppressor of the inflammation. But the number of the articles is much less as compared to cancer research. So we may have to do a little more functional assays. So essentially, this is a summary of the how and the essentially for the result of the circulatory microRNAs and the low circulatory microRNA, no association with monocyte cytokine. Maybe we can't completely say that, but our data showing that low the microRNA means more like a stays higher monocyte cytokine profile. So I thought there might be something else is and it's retaining for the this high monocyte cytokine profile. Okay. So this is the progress report of the project funded by Brain Foundation. Then also this one is also funded by John Tay Foundation. And the Brain Foundation funding is very helpful because the DHS Department of Health and Human Resources of the New Jersey, they didn't fund us. There is no funding available because of the pandemic. They started funding a little bit this year, so we get a small amount. But we were able to continue this project because of the Brain Foundation funding. And thank you very much for that funding. Okay. And also, I didn't, but thank you for all the clinical staff and also my laboratory, my technicians and all the collaborators. So that is my my report. So I finish. I think
One question, if you want to answer that, and we can conclude. Thank you so much. It was a great presentation. Thank you, Dr. Blakely.
Yes, we have one question. Does dexamethasone or prednisone alter the monocyte marker profile? And is there any benefit to ASD patients?
I think because of the steroid changes almost everything. So with these assays, we avoided for any of the patient, within 2 weeks of the steroid use, because almost non-specifically all these cytokine production we know it's going to be suppressed by steroid. So.
And I have one quick question. Just that longitudinal profile that you showed, you had, I think, 3 points on it. And I didn't know when that started and how wide
I'm sorry. Yeah, because this is only for the case presentation. The starting point is a time when the patient enters the study. And for the seizure patient, that's before I started treating for the seizures. And then it's like a closely monitored. And so
what's the distance between your points?
It's usually 6 months to 6 months, 3 to 6 months. But each patient has a little different. So I didn't really do that very clearly. But for because we don't really protocol per se, we're supposed to get to the additional sample 4 6 months. So we just followed it. But seizure patient have the striking difference, so that we get it a little early time point. Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
So thank you so much. And thank you all for attending till the end, and see you all bright and early tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thanks, Pramila.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.